Here we are again, folks. It's Brother Peter with tidbits from the Word. We're going to look at the shortest book in the Old Testament today, and it is called Obediah. It's a brief, and it's a prophetic book. It tells about the prophecy of what happened, the past, the present, and for the future. God is going to deal again in millennial reign with this place called Edom, with these people called Edomites. That's quite a statement to make in a book that only has 21 verses in it. And it talked about all the way through it was judgment against Edom, and judgment against the Edomites, the ancient enemies of Israel. They were the people that had the place called Petra. The Lord allowed me back in 73 to go to Petra. I have marched on that wall before. I have seen that fortress. I have been in it. I actually got acquainted with some Arab boys in there and had some good times in 73. Even though I had only got saved in 72, God had given me an insight on a little bit of a spiritual thing to know how to get along with people. It's a brief book. Its structure is very, very firm, though. The introduction of the author himself, the prophet Obediah. He is the one. Obediah is the shortest, smallest, oldest Old Testament book. Not the oldest, but the smallest and shortest Old Testament book with 21 verses. We know nothing about the author. Nothing. We don't know anything about him except his name. And we know what his name meant. His name meant, I think, let me see. I got to be careful. I study so many that I had to be careful that I've got it right. This particular book I'm looking at right here doesn't give it to me. And I had one that did. I've got about 6 or 7 books open here. When you're studying a book of the Bible, you need to have your Bible open, and you need to have as many books as you have written on that Bible chapter and on that subject. And if I had them all open, I'd have 20 open, or 30, even 40 I got here. But I've got 4 or 5 open. We know that the author was clearly identified as Obediah. And that's all we really know about him, is he was Obediah. We know, except his name. He was a servant of the Lord. That's what his name meant, a servant of the Lord. Now, Obediah has only one theme, and that concerns the destruction of the nation Edom, which they came, we'll look at this later where they came from, but right now, Edom, for its treachery toward Judah. They could sneak out of their stronghold and attack Judah and attack Israel and run back into their stronghold, and Israel had not a chance. Didn't have a chance against them. The sig that goes in there is a long sig that goes in there. You couldn't climb the walls and get to them. You couldn't get to them any other way but coming in that sig, and you couldn't come in that. One man could hold down an army of trying to come in that one place to get in there. So they were safe. There were at least 4 instances when Edom helped to plunder Jerusalem and Judah. These were during the reign of Joram in 853 BC. 853 years before Christ. They did. You say, Brother Peter, you sure are stumbling and bumbling today to get this out. Listen, I have sat for hours going through this, and I have looked at book after book, and I've got this thing down pat, and it's just not falling in place like I would like it to. But it will before I'm done. And during the reign of Ahaz, they were in here. And during the reign of Ahaz, and during the reign of Zedekiah, and the house of Edom was to be revealed by God Now, God is going to be the one that's going to have to get these guys defeated and get these guys moved out of the way. It's going to take God because they are impregnable for the average man. And because of their thankless hearts, they had become proud, arrogant, because they lived in those high, inaccessible mountains and cliffs, were surrounded by the capital. And by the way, that city of Petra was their capital. And it also was the mint. I had opportunity when I was over there. I carried lifesavers with me, hundreds of packs of lifesavers, and I passed them out to little boys. And in Petra, I had a young man come up and give me 2 coins out of the mint, the old mint that was there. These were 2 coins that were found. There's no telling how much those coins would be worth today, and but I misplaced them somewhere like a dummy. God has given me through my life some things that probably would have been turned into real cash, but I guess He didn't want me to have it. He didn't want me to have that ability. If I had that ability today, I would give it away. If I had the ability to be a, what you call it, when you're a person that gives away money, that's what I would be today. I would give money to people today. I would see that young people got through school. I would see that the college we have down there at the church was full of people, and I would do that and see that is done, and get some people out that are following the true God, the God of heaven, the God that created the heavens and the earth, and take care of them. And I see many incidences where just this morning I was thinking with $1 or $2. I told my class, I challenged my boys, 6 or 8 of them, that the one that brought the best thing written on the book of Daniel, I would give them $5. Well, I had one 2 weeks ago brought one in. It was done by a 10-year-old boy, and it looked like it, but it had the proper things written down in it. And then today, another one brought me one. It was a mess, but it had all of the proper things written down. It was perfect in what it said. And so those 2 boys got their $5 bills. Those $5 bills today, when these boys get up and working age, and they're in the church, and they're part of the deacons, and they're part of that $5 will not only be in heaven forever, but it will come back to the church in tithes and offerings. I always tell children when I give them money that 10% belongs to God. 10% belongs to God. Let's get back in the book. During the reign of Zedekiah, the house of Edom was revealed by God because of their thankless hearts. They became proud, arrogant, and they lived in those high, inaccessible mountain cliffs which surrounded their capital city of Petra. And note it. The unique ruins that are cut out of the solid cliffs of those rose-colored rocks and long hidden arid region of the Dead Sea were discovered in 1812 before somebody else came and discovered that. It sat dormant for a while. And the people that live there now have a very short lifespan. They live in those cave holes. This back in those rocks as caves. They live in those caves, and they cook and they burn with this kind of straw that they go out and get, like they used to make bricks with back in Egypt. And they cook with those, and because of that, they get the respiratory disease and die young. And Esau had founded and fathered this proud people. They were a proud people. These Edomites were. God prophesied that every nook and every cranny of Petra would be searched and robbed and every treasure found and taken. Edom's allies would turn against them. Now they had some people that they hooked up with. Every time they went down to take Jerusalem, they hooked up with a bunch of people. And they went down there. But now those were called their allies. They were their supposedly friends. But their friends are going to plunder them. Their wise men would be filled with stupidity. Edom was noted for her wise men. Eliphaz was the one that was one of Job's three friends. And he was from Teman, 5 miles east of Petra in Edom. Now Teman joined up, and whenever they went against Israel, Edom would go with them. And they would join up and go against Israel. But here's one of Job's foolish friends that had much wisdom of the world, but not much wisdom from God. They were not smart men, godly. They deserted their blood brothers, Judah, in the time of great need. Both people were related. They came from the two twins. You remember Jacob and Esau. Esau was the one that sold his birthright for a bowl of porridge. Whenever he got into a weak place, he would revolt to the easiest thing to do to take care of that need. Rather than to go out and work and do something like he should, he was willing to try to get the best thing that he could get quickest. So they stood aloft, refusing to lift even one finger to help. This was Esau's bunch. They wouldn't help their own brothers' children for anything. They actually rejoiced in Judah when Judah had agony. They rejoiced about it. They mocked him. They stood around and mocked him. I've got all kinds of writing literature about this, but can't say it all on here. They occupied their lands after captivity. They waited until somebody drove them off, and they ran right down there and occupied the land for a little while. You know, Petra was a place of all rock, no grass, no lawns, nothing to eat unless you bring it in. Nothing there that was really good. It was just a beautiful place of protection. That was all it was, a beautiful place of protection. They stood at the crossroads and killed those trying to escape. Well, what a terrible situation. Here they are, standing at the crossroads, then those people trying to escape have got to come out of there, the Judaites. They've got to come out of there, and when they did, the Edomites stood there and killed them and robbed them of everything they had. So those they did not murder, they returned either to Judah's enemies or became prisoners of war. They made them prisoners of war, or they returned them to the enemies. The house of Jacob is to be revived by God. In chapter 1, 17 through 21, talks about the house of Jacob. In spite of their terrible persecution, punishment, and some deserved and others undeserved, Judah will someday be fully restored to Palestine. Wow. Do you know in the millennial reign, God is going to have 1,000-year reign on this earth, this very earth. Before he throws this earth, cast it into the lake of fire in hell forever and ever to burn, before he does that, he's going to use it for 1,000 years. And he's going to loosen the devil for about 7 years after that. And the devil's going to take another innumerable multitude of angels and people with him to be cast into hell forever and ever, to burn forever. He's going to deceive a multitude. And note that some of these prophecies concerning Edom have already come to pass, at least in part. By 312 BC, before Christ, the Nabateans and the Arab people had displaced the Edomites, leaving Petra empty. They had emptied out Petra. They had cleaned the place out. They had totally took it out. By the way, to get to Petra, you had to be a pretty smart person to get there, of the area over there. You couldn't just take off one day and say, I'm going to Petra. It was several miles, and it was out in the desert, and it was in a lonely place, and the only thing that made it worth anything was when it was occupied, and it was occupied usually by rebels and renegades. And even though the mint was there, the mint where they kept the money, where they made the money, was a part of it. They fled to southern Palestine and were later subdued by the Jewish military hero John Hercules during the Maccabean period. Now, you and I, as Christians, we do not, as a general rule, use the Apocrypha where the Maccabees were. But the Maccabees were there, and the Maccabees were a part of history. And that's part of history, not Bible, but history. The wicked King Herod came from the the group of the Edomites. And he was a wicked king. Herod was a wicked, wicked, wicked king. And he was part of the Edomites. And everybody leaves a line. Everybody has a line. Ruth and Naomi. We heard a preacher preach the other day, and he had researched and researched and researched, and he had come up with the fact. The fact that when Orpah, the woman that said, I'm not going with Ruth, I'm going back to my people, and Ruth went with Naomi, but Orpah went back. Well, Orpah was the mother, or the matron d', let's put it that way, of the giants that came up in the land. And here's Ruth, was the picture, and Boaz, the picture of Christ, bringing the Gentiles into the kingdom. Ruth and Boaz is a picture of Jesus bringing the Gentiles into the kingdom. And here's the other girl on the other side. Now, let me tell you something. David was from this side over here, from Ruth's side, and Goliath was from Orpah's side. Two sister-in-laws that went two different directions, and later on in years, their ancestors meet each other in battle. How about that? And we're going to have that kind of thing even in this life. That people bring on people, and then they come up, they show up later. The old saying is, a bad penny will return. They were destroyed in AD 70, along with the Jews when they revolted against the Roman Empire. So these Edomites got finished up by the Roman Empire. Other scripture verses which foretell the doom of the Edomites are, and we have some in Isaiah, we have some in Ezekiel, we have some in Amos. And in spite of the nation's sin, listen to this, that nation's sins were terrible. A gracious God will someday restore Edom. Isaiah 11:14. Edom is going to be restored. Edom is going to be restored. Do you know what that's a picture of? That's a picture of you and me. I'm still a heathen. I'm saved by grace. And I have the Holy Spirit in this heathen body. This heathen body was sowed in the flesh. And every chance it gets, it will get in the flesh. And when it gets in the flesh, it's a terrible thing. It's opposite of what God is and what Jesus is. So I have to be careful that I don't get in the flesh. Let's make a quick synopsis back over what we just did in here, and let's look at this. The prediction of judgment on Edom was 1 through 9 in that chapter, verses 1 through 9. And then we see the reason for judgment was 10 through 14. And then we see that the result of the judgment of Edom is 15 and 16. And then again, we're looking at the possession of Edom by Israel in 17 through 21. where Israel finally captured it. And when we made our trip to Israel, it was the Israelites, not the Jordanians, even though Petra is on Jordanian turf, if I'm not mistaken, and the Israelites are the ones that carried us there to it. And Nehemiah mentions the place. In 1 Kings, it's mentioned. And Ezra, it's mentioned. The Babylonians had something to do with it at one time, using that place. It's a historical setting. If you wanted to take, I got some of the books behind me here. The great historian, he writes about it, about Petra. It was not a completely hidden subject. Not that everybody, though, didn't go there. Just everybody didn't go. Wasn't like going to the beach to go to there. The book takes and shows us God's promises to His covenant people, and seriously declares in this book of the genesis of this beginning of Abraham and his descendants, also promised, and the special people against who would try to do them harm. And these Edomites, that's what they did. They came and tried to do the people of God harm. But God is determined to keep His faith to the people in spite of their unworthiness and their disobedience. And He is going to deal not only with the Edomites again, but He's going to deal also with the Jewish people again when the time comes. The little book of Obediah. I could give a quick reading. The reading of it is, I have about 10 minutes here that I could read the book, but I don't have it in front of me right now. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and call this excerpt on Obadiah a short one, but complete. So we will see you next time. Bye-bye.